Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. We are really excited to have you all here for today's conversation. We are going to be we'll go ahead and get started now. One of our other speakers is going to be joining us shortly. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Madiha Hussein and I'm the Special Counsel for Anti-Muslim Bigotry at Muslim Advocates. Muslim Advocates is a national legal advocacy organization headquartered in Washington, D.C. We work in the courts, in the halls of power, and in communities to halt bigotry in its tracks. I want to start by thanking you all for joining today's webinar about keeping your virtual events free from hate. Over the last several weeks, as we all know, there's been an unprecedented number of meetings and events taking place virtually as we continue to grapple with the realities of a global pandemic. While virtual events give us the opportunity to stay connected with our friends, families, and communities more broadly around the world, we know that the increase in online gatherings also comes with growing concerns and about digital safety in particular. Just to share a few examples, in just the last few weeks, a Muslim Student Association had a virtual meeting that was attacked by a disruptor. A health forum organized by a Muslim public health organization was interrupted, and Jewish community events, including funerals, have been disrupted by racists and white supremacists. As our community members and houses of worship prepare for virtual gatherings during Ramadan this year, we hope that our webinar today will provide useful tips and best practices for securing these virtual events that you're planning. I'm really excited that we're going to be joined by two speakers today, but before I introduce them, I want to go through a few housekeeping announcements just so that we understand the process for today. So first, due to the high volume of callers, all lines are muted and they will remain muted throughout the call. We have already received a number of great questions, but you can actually still submit questions to us during the call by email to questions@muslimadvocates.org. And for those of you that have joined us by computer or tablet or laptop, in the chat box, you'll be able to see that the email address there in case you need to contact us for questions. And lastly, we will be recording this webinar and we'll be sending the recording as well as some additional materials out by email after the webinar is over. So I want to jump right in. We have with us so far our speaker, Sharik Zafar from Facebook. And I want to ask Sharik to start the conversation off. Sharik, can I turn things over to you? You are on mute, Sharik, if you can unmute yourself.
All right. Am I on? Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, can hear and see you. Thank you.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody at Muslim Advocates for everything that you do. It's an incredibly important organization, especially now. But in particular for inviting me and having this event. As you said, Madiha, because of COVID-19, so many communities, including communities of faith, have been shifting online, because they're not able to meet for congressional prayer or for other types of meetings. I have kids, they have virtual taekwondo sessions, virtual guitar and piano lessons, virtual, the Quran teacher that would come, it doesn't, now does her sessions virtually. And that's great. And products like Facebook Live and Zoom and Google Hangouts and these services are really important. But it's also incredibly important that we keep them safe. And so what I wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about what we're doing in our response to COVID-19 and some specific areas that I think might be relevant with respect to our products and our tools. So regarding COVID-19, we believe that we have a role to play. So we've been trying to support a variety of communities. We made a recent announcement that we're giving a $100 million grant to small businesses. We've connected about 2 billion people to accurate information from the WHO and other important health organizations. We've also supported journalists and fact checkers, giving them increased funding because of the rise of misinformation related to COVID-19. And we're also trying to make, making our products available to communities that really need them. So one thing I wanted to flag, and I'll send these links to you, Madiha, so perhaps you can circulate them afterwards. but we've launched a faith hub. We just had Easter and Passover, and now as we start rolling into Ramadan, faith communities in particular are looking for ways to keep in touch. Religious leaders are trying to keep in touch with their congregations. They need to fundraise, give spiritual guidance and direction. And so we've launched a faith hub. It's at facebook.com/community/faith. And it gives great information about how religious organizations, regardless if you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, can leverage our product to keep in contact. We've also recently had a webinar with the Islamic Society of North America, the National Council of Churches, and the Islamic Medical Association of North America, where we had a kind of detailed briefing on what to do if you're a religious organization trying to leverage these products and services. So one thing I just want to flag is if there's folks out there that are listening that are interested in this type of content, you can certainly search for it on Facebook, but you can also get in touch with me through Madiha. And, we can try to figure out if there's something. Now, would you like me to go ahead and talk about some of the things that we're doing to keep our platform safe, or should I pause right there?
No, that would be great. We can start with that, and then we're obviously going to have some questions that we get into later.
Right.
But I think safety and security is obviously top of mind for folks right now. So if you could go into that a little bit, it would be great.
Sure. So look, we're really happy that people have found some of our products and services relevant right now, and that they're being able to build community, whether it's keeping in touch with your parents or friends, or within groups. But we also want to do our level best to make sure that people have a positive experience online and that people are safe online. So one thing I want to flag, and I think most people know this, but I think it bears repeating, that if you're a Facebook user, you always have the ability to report content. And you can go, whether it's on a page or a messenger chat, you click on a little icon, whether it's a setting button or some other, there's a little button that you push and you can report content. And it'll either be something called find support or report link to us. And then we will have a team of reviewers looking at that. Now, with respect to COVID-19, this is an unprecedented challenge. And we're working to remove content that has the potential to contribute to real-world harm. That could be through prohibiting coordination of harm, where you have various actors coordinating misinformation campaigns, hate speech, bullying. People are trying to sell medical masks and related goods where they're trying to, where there's a spike in prices, all sorts of false information about miracle cures. So across a broad panoply of bad content, we're working to keep our platform safe. Now, one thing that we've seen is that, that we're aware of people, I think the term is Zoom bombing, or coming in to Facebook Live. My kids were in school and they had a challenge because they were using some platform, and some students logged in under a guest name, and then you started using posting slurs, all sorts of big information, and the teacher couldn't know what was going on, right? And so in addition to the examples that you shared, there's lots of other examples of really and because hate exists offline, too often exists online. So one thing I wanted to flag for folks that are using Facebook Live is there's things that you can do. Now, the good thing about Facebook Live is that there's an immediacy there, right? People can connect with their communities during extraordinary times, and those are religious leaders, there's organizations, and there's ordinary people who want to share what's going on. Now, one thing that we've done, and this is on us, right, is to prioritize the moderation of Facebook Live content. Because of its immediacy, and we learned that after Christchurch, that we really need to be on top of it. So we're prioritizing content review of live content, with in particular, the worst of the worst harm. So self-harm, suicide, things like that. The other thing that we've done is we've made restrictions on who can use Facebook Live. And we've updated our policy. So now there's a one-strike policy. Anybody that misuses Facebook Live and violates our community standards, and our community standards are posted online, they're essentially the rules of the road about what, how you can and cannot use Facebook. So if anybody violates one of our community standards, they'll be prevented from using Facebook Live. And they can range from 30 days to not being able to use Facebook Live at all. Right, so that's what we're doing. We're moderating. But the question then is, like, what can your community, what can our users do? So there's a few things. First of all, what you can do is, let's say you have comments, right? People are making comments. You can moderate your comments. So the administrator of the page that's running the live feature can delete a comment, or you can hide a comment. Now, in my opinion, it's actually better to hide the comment. They're both near instantaneous, but the good thing about hiding a comment as opposed to deleting the comment is the person who made the comment won't know that you've hidden it, right? But nobody else will, right? And so then you can keep a record of that and report it. And then based on the severity of the violation, that person may suffer consequences, right? And so that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is, and we have this, it's a page, and I'll send this to you. It's called Publishing Live Broadcasting. It's a page that we've set up. You can set up various features. So for example, commentators can only comment once every 10 seconds. You can limit comments to 100 characters. You can have a setting that says only your followers will be allowed to comment, right? And restrictions that an account must be at least 2 weeks old. So sometimes, somebody will try to set up a fake account. And we do a pretty good job leveraging artificial intelligence to get rid of fake accounts. But sometimes they sneak through. So you can say that, look, this person has to have an account for 2 weeks. And then you can also, viewers must follow the stream for at least 15 minutes. So there's a number of steps that you can do on live just to give our users control so they can moderate the live feed. So let me pause there. I think that's kind of a good snapshot of what we're doing. I know another speaker has joined us. So let me pause there, and then I'm happy to continue as you see fit, Medina.
Thank you so much, Shark. That was really helpful. And I think, some of the stuff you covered is really detailed, and we may get back to some of that in the questions. Sure. But yes, I'd love to turn now to our other speaker, Jeff Bechtel from Zoom. Sorry for any of the issues that you had logging in, Jeff, but we're so excited to have you here. We just had Sharik from Facebook kind of give us a little bit of an overview of some of the features that they have on their platform for broadcasting live and using Facebook Messenger. And now I'd love for you to take over and tell us a little bit more about Zoom and all of the things that y'all are working on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thank you, and thank you, Muslim Advocates, for having me. So I'm Jeff Bechtel, account executive at Zoom in our mid-market area. Sorry for the confusion getting on. A little embarrassing since we're using Zoom, but we made it. I'm on my iPhone. So first and foremost, I do want to say that Zoom is 100% safe and secure for all of you guys to use. Given the current environment with COVID and everything going on, the whole world is transitioning to virtual. And Zoom is leading that charge. And a big piece of that is privacy and security. And that has become our number one focus. We're putting off even, new fun app features and releases and things like that on hold so that privacy and security is at the forefront for all of our customers. And that's coming from the top down all the way from Eric Yuan, who is our founder and CEO. If any of you guys have been lucky enough to attend one of his security webinars, he's an awesome guy. And his slogan, our slogan at Zoom, is delivering happiness. So that is what we are hoping to do for everybody, when joining Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars. And speaking to Madiha, there's two parts of the platform that I want to cover today. So meetings and webinar. Webinar is what we're in right now. So a host, a couple panelists, they're live on audio, video. The rest of the audience is view only. So they're not connected to audio, even if they wanted to be. And the way that I would imagine this being helpful is for those large prayer service type events where you have, a small handful of panelists who are, leading a prayer or something like that. And beyond that, those registration links, you can turn registration on so that only registered users are joining the event. And you can share those a bit more publicly as only the panelists are connected. So even if a random person does join, they're stuck in your audience and they can't do anything regardless. But a bit less collaborative. The next thing I wanted to cover is meetings. So that's Zoom's bread and butter. It's a lot more collaborative. Everybody is on audio and video, and they can share and participate with each other. That being said, this is going to be a lot more important, especially in today's day and age, to get the right settings on and make sure that you're monitoring it properly. These, I imagine, would be more so for break the fast type meetings or other community gatherings that you guys are having, where you want participation, you want people, communicating back and forth, having a little bit of fun while we can. And that's what meetings is going to be great for. But like I said, those are going to be important to make sure that they're secured properly. And Eric or Mediha, can you share the PDF that I sent? Awesome. And I'll share this with you guys so that you can share with everybody else that's tuned in. So if we could scroll down a little bit, what this is going to cover is pre-meeting settings and meeting settings to make sure that your online events are secure as they can be. Yeah, so stop here, this is perfect. So waiting room is something we've turned on by default for all of our accounts. So this essentially, as the host, you're gonna get hit with so-and-so has hit your waiting room, or a list of people have hit your waiting room, so that you know every single time who's joining and you can clear them as such. So there's different options in there that you can get into in terms of customizing it, adding pictures, logos, or titles for the waiting room, or instructions even, and you can send a message to the waiting room if you see fit before letting them into your meeting. Next after that is the personal meeting ID. And so to avoid confusion, I would recommend just don't even use it, as that is a static meeting. It never changes. Unless you're very familiar with Zoom, then you know how the PMI works and you can use it. But for simplicity's sake, I would randomly generate all of your own meeting IDs. And then it just makes it a lot easier. And we've upped actually the digits from 9 to 11. So there's over trillions of different options. So securing the meetings a bit more. Next to that is require a password to join. Again, it just adds another layer of security. Like there's a password on this webinar. I'd recommend just putting passwords on all of your meetings and webinars just to add that extra layer of security. You can also only allow registered users or domain verified users to join. The domain verified is more so, for businesses and things like that. So if people are joining from Gmails, Outlooks, Hotmails, I would just recommend turning meeting registration on. That way people joining have to sign up. They have to give you their name and their email address to be even allowed in. Then following on the next page is more in-meeting settings. So all of those things that I just went through are prior to the meeting happening, and they're all settings that you can see on the Zoom backend when sending out invitations. The next thing, in-meeting controls. So these are going to be important when you're live in the meeting. Big one being you can lock a meeting, and that does exactly what you think it does. It completely locks it down, so anyone who's in there is obviously in there, but anyone that wants to come in, even if they were invited, won't be allowed to join. So it does truly lock it, and you can, in the meeting, unlock it for even 10 seconds and relock it again if there's someone on the outside that wants to come back in. So it is very, very easy to use and maneuver. You can also enable waiting room on the fly. So if you forgot to do it prior to, you can do it right at the start when you're in a meeting. Next to that, manage participants. That's going to be very big. Next to that, actually, I wanted to add the security icon. So you can kind of see it in that picture there, but that is something that our engineering team worked on in probably under a week, and we released to the entire Zoom ecosystem. And it's just a quick, easy way to click that and control your meeting. So from there, you can, stop screen sharing as a participant. You can stop annotation. You can lock the meeting from there and do the waiting room thing from there as well. So it's not hidden. If you're thinking security, think that button. And then next to that is manage participants. So that gives you the ability to mute all, unmute all, remove users, You can make co-hosts, things like that. That all happens from manage participants. So again, that's another very important button. We do have in-meeting chat available. And again, for simplicity, confusion's sake, I would just disable private chat so that no one's sending things or doing stuff they shouldn't supposed to be doing, and turning off annotation just for simplicity's sake. And next to that, you can see you can make a co-host. So that just gives the host a little bit less to worry about, so that you can have one or even two. They get the same in-meeting host controls as the host does, so they can help with managing, the waiting room or muting people, unmuting people, and stuff like that. So I recommend, putting someone or two people that you trust in the meeting as a co-host to help you out when you're hosting, these kinds of events. And last but not least, removing participants. So if you do get an uninvited guest, you can kick them out. And then there's an additional setting in the back end called allow removed participants to rejoin. And I would recommend turn that off. I have it off on my own Zoom account. So that way, if you have to kick someone out, they can't come back to the meeting, even if they wanted to. That covers a lot of the pre-meeting and in-meeting settings from a security standpoint that I would recommend all of you guys use. And I'll share this PDF with Mediha and Eric so that you can share it with everybody. I would recommend just shooting it out. It's very easy to digest, so that they can take a look at it when they can. It has little links in there too to our support site with different articles to further explain how the waiting room works and how managed participant works if people want to take a deeper dive there. But by following the above, your virtual events are going to be secure and safe, so that you can have gatherings over Zoom be very easy, and hopefully a little fun and useful during this holy time. And that's all from me. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. You touched on some of the key issues and questions that have come up, but we're also going to, turn to questions momentarily, and we might get into some more of the specifics, but that was a really great overview. And for those of you that are joining, we will definitely send out these resources after the call so that you can access them and you can use the links and so on and so forth that we've seen so far. So I want to just remind everyone, if you have any questions that have come up that you're after you've heard both Sharik and Jeff speak, you can submit questions to questions@muslimadvocates.org, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. We have already heard some really great tips so far, but I want to actually spend, I think, Sharik, you're sharing your screen with one of the resources. Maybe we can turn back to that in just a moment. I'm going to go through a couple of the tips that have come up, and then we'll get back to your resource that you're sharing right now. Thank you. So we're going to spend the next several minutes just reviewing some key best practices for securing your virtual events. You've already heard some of them. The ones that I'm going to share right now are more generic that you can try to implement across the board on different platforms as you see fit. It's not tailored specifically to Facebook or Zoom. But before we do that, we actually have a poll that we wanted to try to get a quick sense from folks. What various platforms are you considering using for the different events that you're thinking about, whether it's during Ramadan or just in general? We know a lot of folks are planning a lot of virtual events. So just click whichever ones that you're using, or if there's anything that's not on there, let us know what you're using, and it'll be good to know, just so moving forward we can try to make sure people have resources for all of these different platforms. So some of the things that you've already heard, this may be slightly repetitive, but I just wanted to kind of go through some key tips. I think maybe we can close the poll now and folks can see. Looks like Zoom is very popular. So that's great. And I think that we know that Zoom has experienced a huge influx in users over the last several weeks. So this kind of proves that point. But that's very helpful information for us. So if we can turn to the slide about some key best practices, I'm going to review this really quickly. So the first we've heard already is require registration. Rather than hosting a public event that's open to everyone, ask participants to register in advance. A simple registration process that requires registrants to share their names and contact information. It actually not only gives institutions like yours the opportunity to review and vet the participant list, but it also can serve as a deterrent for bad actors because they may not want to go through those steps. So that's one key best practice we would recommend where possible. The second is limit access to event links. Take steps to ensure that URLs or links to your meetings or events are not posted publicly. So if you want to post the registration publicly, that doesn't mean you actually have to post the meeting ID or link itself publicly. Instead, share it only with those who register to participate, as we've heard already. In particular, you can do that with Zoom. When possible, make events password protected shortly before the event starts. If, again, this is when it's applicable. The next is create unique event links. Create unique links or meeting IDs for each individual event rather than repeatedly using the same one for multiple events. This is, again, another measure that adds a layer of security because any potential bad actors or disruptors who've gained access to previous links, they won't be able to do that if you're changing each time. Next, we have a recommendation to enhance restrictions for public events. So, Sharik talked a little bit about some of the things you can do with a Facebook Live. If events are open to the public, whether it's Zoom, Facebook, platform, consider turning off or disabling features that allow participants to speak, share screens, customize their background, rename themselves, annotate, which I'm going to ask Jeff to talk about in a moment, or chat comment during the event. So these are important features that some platforms allow. The next, we heard this as well, is assign a host or co-host where possible. This will allow others to monitor what's going on while the individual speakers themselves are preoccupied with their presentations. Consider assigning more than one host for larger events as well. Additionally, we encourage you to enable security controls and features. It's also important that you actually take the time to review all of the security controls and features that are available to you before an event begins. Consider turning on or enabling as many features as possible to increase security. And remember that these features can usually be adjusted throughout your program. So you can start with more and decrease those if you feel comfortable. Make sure that you have the latest version of whichever platform you're using so that all security features are current and up to date. And the last thing that we say is, prepare for the possibility of disruptions. Hope for the best, but expect the worst. This means that your team will have a plan in place for what to do if there is an event disruption, which of course we hope that with these tips that won't be the case. As I mentioned, we're going to be sending these tips out after the call, so don't worry if you haven't captured everything. But for today's webinar, we actually tried to model some of these best practices ourselves at Muslim Advocates. As you all experienced, we required registration. We haven't posted any links to the webinar on any of our public-facing networks or platforms like Facebook or Instagram. We required a password to join, and all attendees have been muted. In addition to that, prior to the call, our team actually went through and enabled a number of security features that we've heard about already, and they aren't necessarily part of the default settings that you'll find on Zoom. We assigned 2 co-hosts to the event, and we walked through what we would do in case of a disruption. So, I'm happy to report that halfway through, we haven't had any disruptions yet, and hopefully that stays true through the remainder of the call. But, these are all important steps that we can take regardless of the platforms that we're using. We recognize that not all of these events can be restricted in the same way, especially for those organizations that are hoping to reach a broad audience during the month of Ramadan. We know that communities are widespread and we recognize all of that, but we hope that these will be some model policies and best practices for you that can be useful when you're planning your virtual events. So with all of that, yes, Sharik, please go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in. I don't know, am I on mute? No, okay. I think that list is terrific and an incredible resource. With respect to Facebook, I would just add one small addendum is that report, because when we can, we like to, there's sometimes consequences that we can, that people will face when they violate our policies. So I would just say that to the extent that you're able to do so, please take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for that. We actually created a fact sheet that we'll send out in addition to those best practices. And one of the things that we talk about in the fact sheet is what to do if something does happen. And we do recommend reporting. And Sharik, I might ask you to talk about that in detail again in the Q&A, which we'll turn to in a second. Sharik, you were sharing a resource. I don't know if you want to go through that now. You're still on mute, or you're on mute.
I just wanted to walk people.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So this is our Faith Hub, and it gives you a couple of, just some tools. And you can see it's faith.com community/faith up here. And the other thing I just want to say is this is the top of it, but there's 6 steps that faith communities are relevant. And, part of the top 4 are kind of about building community and, hosting prayer study groups, etc. But the other 2 things I wanted to flag, which I think are particularly useful for religious organizations and other nonprofits, is that you can set up charitable giving tools and host fundraisers. So, again, when if it's something that you find relevant, do check it out. It's a relatively new page that we've created, and my hope is that it'll be useful to religious communities around the world. So I'm going to stop sharing now, Benita, back to you, but I just wanted to flag that for folks.
Yeah, thank you. And if you can send us that link, we'll be sure to include it in the follow-up. So let's now spend the remainder of the time that we have to go through some of the questions. We've gotten really great questions, and we won't be able to get through all of them, but we want to try to get into some detail with some of the questions that we've gotten so far. So my first question is for Jeff. Can you talk a little bit about how breakout rooms work on Zoom and what a host can do if someone tries to cause a disruption during a breakout? Is the protocol that you went through the same for that process?
Yes, it would be. The breakout room or breakout rooms essentially is the ability to take a meeting, a larger type meeting, and break it into a bunch of different smaller ones. So if there's 50 people, you could break it into 5 groups of 10. The host has complete control over that. You can either randomly throw 10 people in each group, in each breakout room, or you can manually put who you want in each different group. If someone were to come in during a breakout room session, I would imagine they would join the host version, and then the same protocols of removing that user I would take into effect. And then on top of that too, I would lock the meeting if it wasn't already locked, and someone were to come in uninvited. I would remove them, and then I would lock the meeting for the rest of the time.
Okay, and I know you went over this already, but can you remind folks, what does it actually mean to lock an event?
Yeah, so on that security icon that you may have seen in the PDF, there's a button that says lock meeting in there, and that it completely locks the meeting down. So even registered users can't come in. No one can come into the meeting once you've done that.
And so just following on that thread really quickly, if you do have a disruptor, I'm assuming that the plan of action should be to remove that person first, and then you lock the event.
Yes, that's what I would do.
Okay.
Or I guess it doesn't matter which one you do first, but
oh, you can still kick someone out after you've locked an event.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. In what you were talking about relating to the comments section of a Facebook Live. So can we talk a little bit more about that? What steps can be taken to address if there's a Facebook Live going on and someone posts a hateful comment during the Facebook Live? And the other questions that we've gotten is, can you actually disable the comments feature? Or is the focus really on hiding and deleting, like you mentioned?
Right. So you can't disable the feature. you can hide and delete. But the other thing that you can do is, let's say you're worried about potential trolls or people who are going to be disruptive. The other thing that you can do is create a group, a Facebook group, invite people to that group, and then just broadcast live. So then you have total control of everybody that's in that group, and that group can be, very small or very large. And then you've created a safe environment, but you still have the immediacy of live. And I think the value of live, in my view, is that it's integrated into the broader social media platform and tools that we have. So, whether it's, you can, Messenger, Instagram, Facebook, it all kind of works together. And one, I think, really important feature is, as I just said, is creating that group and then broadcasting there. But if you're worried, that people are going to be trolling, etc., it's good to maybe have more than one admin, right? So the other admin can then just sort of delete or hide.
Okay, that was going to be one of my next questions, which is there a way to kind of make a Facebook Live event more private or more controlled? So it sounds like the option is to create a group where you can then host the Facebook Live only for that group.
Right, and the one thing I'd say is, there's some announcements that are coming down the pike that just quite aren't ready yet. So what I'd say to your viewers is just kind of watch the space, because there's some really cool innovations that we're about to launch. We just recently launched Messenger Kids, which is great, but it gives parents total control about what their kids are doing and how they're interacting. But it does allow children to use these tools to communicate, because you can imagine this is tough for parents, it's tough for teachers, it's tough for those who are working. It's also tough for kids, right? And so there's some other really cool features that we'll be rolling out in the weeks ahead that essentially capture this idea that Zoom and other great companies are doing of getting people online, connecting them to have meaningful interactions, but in a variety of different ways. And what I think is cool is that I think Zoom provides an important service. Google, Skype, we do as well, and that consumers just have this choice now. Depending on what they want to do, they can leverage a variety of different products. So it's an exciting time to be in this space.
Yeah, that's great. So one other question related to the live features and the options there. Is it safe to assume that the same features cannot be disabled? So for example, on an Instagram live, you also can't disable the comments there. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Right.
Okay.
I'll confirm with you. I'm on the Facebook policy team.
Yeah, sure.
I'm smart on the Instagram stuff, but that my understanding is it works the same.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's go back to Jeff for a question now. So we talked about this a little bit already, the difference between the webinar and the meeting option. And I know you walk through some of the key features, and we'll send out that resource. But in general, it sounds like webinars allow hosts to have more control over, the possibility of disruption. But some of the same features you're talking about are also available for meetings as well, right? Like kicking out a disruptor, locking, like you said, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you want me to go over the two differences again, or?
I think, you can mention it again. I think folks probably who haven't used Zoom are probably not as familiar, so probably useful for folks to know.
Sure. So the easiest way I can put that is webinar is what this is. So if you're an attendee right now, you realize that you're not on video or on audio, you're simply a view only attendee. And then the few of us that are panelists are the ones really talking, dictating the meeting, and presenting. It's that classic one-to-many blast. So if that's the goal of the event, then I would go with webinar. And it does inherently just have more security around it. The meetings is going to be that where you want participation, you want people to be able to chime in and share. But for smaller events, I would imagine 20 to 30 people. I've moderated meetings of hundreds of people. So it totally can be done either way. It just depends on the environment that you want that event to be like, is how I would differentiate meetings versus webinars in Zoom.
Okay, great. And
Hey, but
yeah,
actually, this is why I love participating in these events. So getting back to Instagram, I did some quick research here. Actually, it's interesting. So Instagram, it has a feature where you can turn off comments.
okay.
And also they have some other interesting features where there's a feature where you can have certain keyword filters, so prevent offensive comments. So again, a different product, same company, but different product with different features. So
Yeah, that's great to know, because I know that some organizations use Instagram Live rather than Facebook Live. So that's great. That's helpful. Thank you for that. One more question for Jeff, and then I'm going to go back to Shark real quick. You talked about the host and co-host option. So can you talk a little bit about how that works? Do you have to like select the person? Is it through, you can identify through email? Because at Muslim Advocates, we were actually just toying around with this, and we chose to do it the way where you use the same login. So that's how we did it. But is it possible to do it where like I could be a co-host and then my colleague Eric could also be a co-host?
Yeah, exactly. So the host of the meeting is the one who's scheduling it and sending it out. And then, yeah, I could have 2, 3 co-hosts that are different users on different accounts, be co-hosts. And again, as the master host, I have, the master keys, so to speak, but the co-host will have the same in-meeting settings and options as the host does. So they can help with moderation and monitoring it, as opposed to having the whole workload on the host.
Great. And they can do that simultaneously. So they can both serve in those functions at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So going back to Sharik, this question that we have on Facebook Messenger, and I know it's like, again, a different product, a different tool. Are there particular security features there with Facebook Messenger that folks should be aware of and can consider using?
Yeah, so Messenger it's an easy way to have private conversations and stay connected, right? And the cool thing about Messenger is that you can use video chat, and now depending on if your phone has the capability, you can do like, I don't know, it's like the Super HD. And in addition to that, you can, there's security features. So now usually people are using Messenger with people that they know, right? But if you go, and so like, let's say whether it's on your phone or on your laptop, if you just go to there'll be a little settings button. And then if you click on that, that will be a way to report content. So typically, something bad, you just end the conversation. But let's say somebody's trolling you, they get a hold of you, you get some random message. There's a way just to kind of report it and say, hey, look, this is, it's spam or it's inappropriate.
Great. When it comes to reporting, Sharik, are there, is there a certain protocol folks should follow when they're trying to report? So I know you mentioned like hiding comments rather than deleting, so that way you can take a screenshot or a document. And then it also sounds like the reporting works differently, whether it's a comment versus a Facebook Messenger comment or thread or something like that.
Well, yeah. So within the tool, whether it's the app or on your desktop, your laptop, it's relatively easy. So I'm on my Facebook page right now, and I'm looking. There's 3 little dots, and you click on those 3 little dots, and you can sort of say report issue. You can report an issue, right? And with Messenger, it's same. And then with Live, you can, the admin will have the ability to moderate, hide or delete. The one thing I would say is I work pretty closely with the content moderation team, and the more information, the better. So ideally a screenshot plus the actual URL, like to the so essentially the link to the page or the content is super useful, because then we can actually go back in and find it. One thing I do want to mention, and this is something that we've been very public about, it's in our newsroom post. COVID-19 has, like lots of companies, it's impacted us. So everybody's working from home. We're working from home, except for those people who absolutely have to be at one of our sites. Everybody's working from home, and that includes our content reviewers, both our employees, but also the people that we've contracted out to. As a result, that's made an impact. Now, what we're doing more is relying increasingly on artificial intelligence, and the good news is artificial intelligence is really good at finding child sexual exploitation, terrorism, and by terrorism, I'm talking about not just international terrorist groups, also far-right groups. But it's not as good as finding hate speech. It's getting better. It was like something like 60%. Now it's close to 80% of the material that that's reported to us, we're able to address proactively, and it's getting better. But because we're having to work from home, we're relying increasingly. We're prioritizing the worst content. So stuff that can lead to imminent violence or death, misinformation related to COVID-19, and that's absolutely wrong. But some of the stuff is being triaged. So you're gonna have a computer look at that. What does that mean? Well, it means that we'll make some mistakes. Candidly, we'll make some mistakes. It also means that normally we'll allow people to appeal. We just don't have the resources to allow people to appeal right now. So if you disagree with our decision, you can sort of note, hey, I disagree, and that will hopefully help us get information more accurate next time, get more content moderation more accurate. But I wanted to be candid with your users that, this is hard. It's harder right now. The good news is, with respect to COVID-19, we're prioritizing a lot of misinformation. So misinformation about, health, that can lead to actual harm. Not only do we remove it, we're also going back to users who may have seen material that's been removed and saying, hey, look, you saw misinformation, here's more accurate information, right? Because in this case, it can be a matter of life and death. So that's why we're trying to prioritize the worst of the worst.
Okay, that's super helpful. I think we all know that we're operating in unique times right now, so appreciate the candidness there on that. But I do think that note that you said earlier, and also something that we're going to stress, is to still take the time to report, because it's important that Facebook hears about it, whether or not, you can act as quickly as you would like to. So turning to Jeff, that question on reporting as well, is there a way for users of Zoom to directly report any disruptions like this, any incidents like this to Zoom, and how does that process work?
Yes, I figured that question was coming. So there is a way to report to us. I believe it's trust@zoom.us. I can send that email address to you, but we are urging our users to do that, right? Similar to what Facebook is doing. So we do want to hear that from the community, because Zoom doesn't stand for it, and corporate businesses don't want to see that either. It's just wrong, plain and simple. So we do want to be aware of it so that we can A, track it, and B, if there is grounds for some kind of discipline to be dealt, then we can handle that accordingly.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you can send us that email, we'll be sure to include it as well. And then, we heard from Sharik how Facebook is also continuously looking at their platform and considering more changes and innovations. I know Zoom has similarly made some really important changes in just the last several weeks. Is there anything that you expect to continue to change with respect to security enhancements, or anything that folks can continue to look forward to about the Zoom platform as we all connect virtually over these last several weeks, and probably continuing for a few more weeks at least?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of stuff coming down the pipe from just feature release in general. But like I said, security and privacy are at the top of mind, and our number one focus. That security icon is already there. And so that was not a part of Zoom for the past 6-7 years that we've been operating. So that was definitely a big step forward, and with something we did super fast. So kudos to our engineers on doing that. But beyond that, I'm not super sure. All those settings that we covered are going to protect our customers online. It's just like I said, those are the important ones to make sure that you have set up. Beyond that, though, we're constantly updating our blog and things like that. So if you're curious, you can subscribe to that, and then I can let you know personally as we have further releases and keep you in the loop on what's related to privacy and security.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to ask each of you to give like a 30 second closing really quick. But one last question for you, Jeff. We got some questions about confidentiality. So can you tell us about the encryption technology that's used by Zoom, if it's applicable at all?
Sure. So we do use like top end industry encryption. So our data in rest and in transit is encrypted using AES 256-bit, if that means anything to anybody. And we use that everywhere. So the only time we dip down is when third-party endpoints, usually those are room connectors, are joining our meetings to allow them to come in. Beyond that, though, like I said, they're at AES 256, and then we use TLS 1.2 for other data in transit. But those are at the high end in terms of the industry standard. And we are actually releasing something that goes much above my head, but I'll keep you in the loop on it.
Great.
Using just more advanced encryption ciphers. So that'll even make it even more secure than it already is today.
Okay.
And
great.
no, we don't leak personal information at all.
Thank
I know
you.
that's been in the media.
Yeah.
We don't do that. That was kind of word of mouth that went a little bit sideways.
Okay. Very helpful. So we're running out of time, but I want to give you both a chance to give any closing remarks, Shark. 30 seconds if you have anything else to add.
Well, first of all, thanks to Muslim Advocates. I think this is a great conversation. It was a privilege to be part of it. I think you're doing an incredibly important service. A. B, I think I would tell your users to think about the type of experience they want, live in a group, etc., and then leverage the products, certainly our products, that make the most sense. We even resurfaced just in this chat the difference between Instagram Live and Facebook Live. And last, look, we want people to have a positive experience on Facebook. So if there's something that you're upset about that you think violates our standards, go to that content and use the find support or report link and report it to us.
Thank you so much. Jeff, any final comments from you?
Not a whole lot for me. Thank you, for having us. Zoom cares. That's a big thing. Zoom cares about our customers. To echo what Shark said, we want our customers to be happy as well. Please let us know if there's anything that you would want to see changed. I know Eric appreciates that. He wants to know. So we do care. And if you do choose Zoom, you're in good hands.
Thank you, Shark and Jeff, so much for joining us today. Thank you to all of our participants for attending and viewing. We will be recording this. We encourage you to share it with any of your community members or colleagues or friends that may want to benefit from this and are also considering virtual events. We know that this is an evolving space and it's an important topic, so we want to continue to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to us with questions or any comments in general about this topic. And we'll be following up again, as I mentioned, by email with resources from today's call, as well as a recording of the webinar. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll be in touch. Take care.